John Gifford, certainly not the better half. Emily's back there, but collectively they are Forecon Industries, which has, among other things, Timberland Realty. You are out
Right.
cruising, you're blazing, you're doing things which Ned was talking about was occurring back in the 1800s. Did some of that, as you're hearing Ned talk about timberlands and things that have happened back then, how it relates to your business today? Was there
Well,
some sort of
Yeah. First of all, I have to say that I probably learned more about the timber industry in this area in the last hour than I have over the last 35 years of working in the business here. That was really phenomenal. What really hit me was listening to Ned talk about the, if you will, the destruction, the environmental, effects that the process that Ned was talking about had on the land, and where you could stand around at 360 degrees and just see black smoke coming up, no trees. And obviously, if you go out today and look around, there are a lot of trees there. So it tells you that resource is very resilient, and it's a sustainable resource if you manage it correctly. That's a plug for foresters, by the way. But that was an amazing depiction of what it's hard to imagine now, but obviously what did occur back then. And it was a fascinating account that Ned gave.
Is there, Ned gave us a sort of a breakdown of at least of the 5 or 6 types of trees that were found here in the early days, and then they were harvested, timbered. And is there a kind of a natural selection so that you could say, John, in Chautauqua County Watershed area, there's a certain percentages of trees which might change because of the harvesting?
Yeah, I heard that back in the 1800s, besides obviously white pine and some of the maple beech birch forests, there was a lot of American chestnut too. And of course, chestnut has disappeared over the years because of the chestnut blight that occurred. But we've come to in successional forests, we've come to a more maple beech birch timber type now that has survived quite some time and is still prevalent out there. There are some areas, I mean, this area of the country, this particular part of the Northeast is well known for some of the very best hardwood resource in the world. I mean, it's maple, it's oaks, it's black cherry down south of us in the Allegheny Plateau. We grow some of the best hardwoods in the world here. So, yeah, but it definitely, when you change the existing species to the extent that Ned was talking about, the white pine, the chestnut, and some other species, the way it was changed, it definitely created a new, if you will, an ecosystem, a different type of hardwood that grows here now.
Can you control that, John? I mean, you are out there doing selective forestry, timber stand improvement. Is that a design? People look at I'd like to kind of change this mix?
Sure. It's not like, obviously it's not like farming, because it's a much longer time period that where trees grow. But by manipulating the seed source and the species, basically the species composition of an area, you can over time change the composition of what's growing there. For instance, there are species that are tolerant species, which means that they're tolerant to shade, and there are species that are intolerant, which means that they can't grow without full sunlight. And black cherry, which is one of our most valuable species in this area, is an intolerant species. It needs a lot of sunlight to grow. one of the ways to get black cherry to reestablish and grow is to clear cut. Clear cutting has a very negative connotation in a lot of places, but if done correctly, it's the proper way to get back a species like black cherry. Maples, on the other hand, are tolerant species, so you can use what they call a selection system of management, where you go through and you kind of pick out the disease-dying mature trees, and because they're tolerant to shade, their seeds that fall to the ground will survive longer under the existing canopy of the other trees that are around there, and still survive in growth. Black cherry seedlings won't. So there are ways to manage for different species. Yeah.
Part of that is driven, of course, by the economy, and part of that is, as we learned from Ned, originally the timbering was domestically used, kind of float it down or bring it down to market at Jamestown sawmills, and then all of a sudden the market grew as there was a supply was less, and you want to take it elsewhere, take it out west, and likewise the timber industry found its way leaving here because we just denuded it. How does that work in your world, even now, the balancing act, as you're managing forest land for several people? I mean, you're really, Forecon is the foremost. You can use that, by the way.
Okay, thanks.
But how does that, there's a sort of marketplace that you're working with.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're blessed in this area with the hardwood resource we have. And again, the thing about this resource is that it's not something you could just pick up and transport and grow somewhere else. It's here because of the soil base that we have, the climate that we have. So in particular, the hardwoods are very valuable in terms of the products that we can make out of them: furniture, flooring, moldings, cabinets, all kinds of things. And that's produced a demand not only domestically but also internationally. And that's the beauty of this resource, is that when things are slow on the domestic side of the economy, sometimes the international markets are demanding hardwood products that we can sell to them. So it's a dual market that we've been, again, blessed with for a long period of time, and there's so many different products that come out of the forest here that are in demand across the world, really. So,
as you're sitting there in the peanut gallery next to your wife, what's the question you would have liked to have asked Ned, but you were just too shy about doing?
Oh my gosh.
And I know you're not shy, John, I can tell you.
I would just, there was a lot of questions. I mean, it was fascinating to hear about some of the detail he came up with, and I'd love to know what his sources were on some of that. But
let me tell you how it can happen. If you spend $30, you can buy a book with it. It is incredibly footnoted.
Perfect.
How's that, Ned?
Perfect. Yeah. No, I love.
You're in there, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Really?
there we go.
I don't know. Did you know Kurt Bauer?
Yes.
You did. Okay. Because Kurt founded Forecon, and yeah, he was around a long time. But that's cool. That's one of the questions I would have asked you if you knew him. So.
Those are great. Thanks thanks for having a sense of humor of just jumping out of
Geez,
the
I
audience.
thought, I would have prepared better. I mean, you could ask me about the Mets or something, but.
Yeah, you want to talk about the general manager that was?
No, that's a little racy.
Just as an aside, we're free-flowing here. In the most recent Western New York Heritage, you get this? Yep. And it didn't naturally come up, but I would have loved to. They have a whole section dealing on the riot that occurred in Mayville. It's called Land Riot, Chautauqua County Settlers Revolt in 1836. It dealt with the Holland Land Company They sold land, usually on a kind of a land contract relationship, and people were trying to sell product, lumber, timber, anything, potash, to get money to pay their land contract. Well, when times got tough, they couldn't pay it. So the actual mortgages were held by the Holland Land Company, and they were starting to foreclose. And there's a whole story about that. But ultimately, in 1836, there was literally a revolt. And for those who remember this vault that's up there in Mayville, that's where the deeds were kept, the mortgages were kept, and they went and attacked it and broke into it and burned those things. Fortunately, there was a separate set of documents in Batavia, so everything wasn't lost, but that was the land, office right there.
That's neat.
So, for those that want to read about what happened in 1836 when the mortgagors weren't happy over the terms of their mortgage, and they wanted to refinance. And a guy named William Seward becomes one of the early heroes of the Holland Land Company, comes here from Auburn. William Seward was the land agent. William Seward, of course, thereafter became Secretary of State under Lincoln and purchased a place called Alaska.
Cool.
Hence Seward's Folly, all here in Chautauqua County. Next, and the second most important person next to Ned Ward.
Here you go.